She admitted that she was still frightened of flying despite having flown thousands of hours every year. I've been wearing the strong woman title for so long that I've forgotten how to say when I'm terrified. Almost involuntarily, I took her hand in mine, shielding the anxiety she'd expressed. Stay, she said, pouring into two separate mugs. Hi, I am Arthur. In America, I am referred to as Artie. I am 28 years old, a trained computer technician, and a self-proclaimed shy leopard. In school, they would put me in the front row so that I had to look people in the eye. I still read paperback books under my desk. At 15, I resoldered my first motherboard. At 19, I rescued the university server from a ransomware outbreak, and I'm still talking about it. I know how far to roll up my sleeves to avoid scratching a chassis, but I have no idea what to say when a gorgeous woman smiles at me. When I opened Mike's front door, the world paused for 2 breaths. The corridor smelled of fresh coffee and the electric tang left after a thunderstorm, but what really struck me was a pleasant citrus perfume, unlike Mike's cheap aftershave. Before I could blink, a lamp flashed in the living room and a woman's shadow passed through the doorway. In response to my surprise, she came to a halt and turned, revealing tiny emerald earrings. I should have apologized. Smiled, explained the impromptu visit, and moved away, but the words remained. Mike's sister Olivia stood there in a business blazer. The collar was unbuttoned just enough to indicate that the day had ended. 5 years ago, she appeared as far as another solar system. Now she was in the same orbit with the same icy blue eyes, but this time they were worn and warm. You! Her voice provided a pleasant surprise. What luck, Mike is not here. The rings were fitted on our fingers using a box built from an old laptop that we had previously soldered together. This was followed by toasting. Mike, who is usually theatrical, declared, "By the way, quarterly profits have increased 5-fold thanks to newlyweds." Applause blended with the city's quiet electric hum. Back in Mike's apartment now, our temporary home base, I played. One of the server logs indicated a file substitution. Forged data anchored the neural system at 15% performance, which was signed amazingly with my own key. My jaw clenched so tightly that it hurt. Last night he sought access to the repository 3 more times before going silent. A shark only stops moving the water as it prepares to pounce. A crackle could be heard throughout the system at 8:17 a.m. A fatal error cannot be undone. Tony was already walking around the floor, leaving grins and sticky notes. Today was Shareholders' Day and the final round of my war with Tony Wilson. The workplace smelled like coffee and hot server plastic. The monitors in my laboratory flashed a warning. It's easier to fly and fall. I'll stay in the game as long as the algorithm is breathing and the heart isn't terrified of acceleration. I awoke 2 hours before sunrise as if the tower had poked me in the back. In the reflection, my ruffled hair blended with a distant neon sign that flashed hope. Its letters flickered irregularly, but they refused to turn off. The upper floors of the Success Empire have thin air and little gravity. The city breathed with 1,000,000 pixels. Somewhere in that radiance, she was possibly not sleeping, wondering if it was the correct idea to let me into her massive machine. I pushed my palm against the cold, smooth glass as if it were a clean circuit board waiting for life. Sleep was replaced by cold clarity. I cloned the code to an external disk and packed it in an envelope labeled M to give to Mike for safekeeping. I stood in front of the panoramic glass. The incident was documented. A minute later, the lights in the hallway turned off. Footsteps retreated on the carpet. Tony's IP address. I ended the session, configured a firewall, and returned a system banner. Unauthorized. Be careful. Around 2 a.m., a security alert came. An external entry from a nearby office. Clever. Sabotage the pilot. Blame the code. Do not let her hide behind her employment. Carla just sent a message. Wilson is still at the office. The monitors flared cobalt. The keyboard clicks like popcorn. Mike's comments resonated. A red surveillance LED lit up. I recognized the algorithm had become a chip in a game where the stakes exceeded the profit margins. After midnight, I isolated myself in the lab to write protective modules. Safeguard the code. If Tony is unable to hire you, he will strive to avoid you. I get it. Actually, I was terrified, I admitted, but not trying is far scarier. Her smile indicated that she had felt the same way before. Then her expression became serious. The wind flowed over her hair, and for the first time that day, my shoulders relaxed. You were a wonder in there, she said as she sipped. You did not flinch in front of a room full of sharks. I want you to connect our workplace with something better than statistics. We headed up to the rooftop deck. Manhattan gleamed beneath. That night, the tower shone like a warm beehive. Olivia entered the lab wearing a nice coat and holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. She handed me one saying it was an update on our tradition, and I understood the answer was always there. Only shyness had kept it quiet. "No, if you don't mind," I said, astonished by the hardness in my tone. The phone vibrated. Mike shared a gif of Captain Picard. "Make it happen," I said, working on it. So remain. Thunder cleared up any last uncertainties. The night paved the way for a story neither of us had expected to write. All that remained was to go into the warm lamplight where our double shadows were already dancing as if they had been anticipating this reunion for years. She sat on the couch beside me. The apartment smelled like coffee and storm ozone. The elderly air conditioner above snores. She curled her knees, holding a cushion like a wall, but her fingertips landed on my hand. Heat spread from my shoulders to my ears. She replied softly, "Sometimes I feel like I'm not running a business, but rather banging my head against a concrete wall that only gets thicker." "And you!" She slid her finger along my lifeline. "You treat the world as though it were still malleable clay. Tony Wilson has submitted a file transfer request. He wants the entire repository." I declined and wrapped the directory in a different encryption key. Almost all cracks can be soldered. Perhaps this is why I continue to believe that humans are not hopeless. Her smile was vulnerable. Her eyes gleamed with thin rays of exhaustion, but also with gratitude. The rain subsided. The lamplight glided across her hair, transforming the golden strands into liquid flame. We covered ourselves with a little blanket. Only a strip of warmth separated us, decreasing with each sentence. I shared my early dread of thunderstorms. "Keep an eye on Wilson. He enjoys other people's thoughts." As I unpacked, a pop-up window opened. She did not draw away. Instead, her thumb traced my lifeline, sending an electric current down my spine. "I apologize if this is too much," I whispered. "Don't let go," she said back. Our breaths coordinated. Outside, the wind died down, and within even our breathing became louder. Her scent was citrus and vanilla, combined with the musty aroma of a Colino novel on the coffee table. We talked till 3. The words began to change into long ellipses. She gave in first, putting her head on my shoulder, her hair tickling my neck. I didn't move, scared of waking her, and watched her chest rise and fall. I realized I'd never been this close to another person's soul. Around 4, my eyelids became glued together. I reached for the light switch. She softly squeezed my hand and asked me to leave the light on without saying anything, which I did. We soon fell into the twilight zone between sleep and alertness. I believed I awoke, or perhaps I hadn't slept at all. The silence pulsed with our shared, beautifully serene rhythm. I smiled into the semi-darkness. I was certain I was having the best dream with my eyes open. Just then, a loud mechanical click broke the pre-dawn calm. A key turned in the hallway lock like a new bolt of lightning. Olivia stirred, her eyes widening. My lungs froze in mid-breath. Carla escorted me down a long corridor to a glass cubicle labeled Guest Lab. A new badge, a business laptop, and a cup with the Skyline emblem were all on the table. "Do you need anything, Yell?" she said, then whispered. The doorknob turned. The night has brought us silence. The morning had to decide whether we could tell the truth before someone else did. That's not terrible for a geek. Then he departed. The door was left open by a finger's width, as if he was still listening. A bag dangled in his fist, a bright Hawaiian towel protruding from it, and 3 days of stubble made his jaw appear rough. His eyes traversed the room, froze on our joined hands, and remained there like a button. He let out a breath that was equal parts chuckle and sigh. He drawled as he removed his jacket. "Looks like I missed a really fun party." My throat was dry. I blinked, half thinking it was a dream, but the silk of Olivia's hair against my cheek seemed too real. She straightened, ran a hand over her forehead, and replied calmly, "You said your flight wouldn't arrive until noon. Later flights were canceled due to the ice storm. They switched us to a pre-dawn charter. Surprise!" He pushed the bag into a corner, removed his sneakers, and completely by accident kicked my damaged novel under the couch. The seconds passed like broken glass. I attempted to apologize, but all that came out was a croak. Coffee still on Olivia's fingers squeezed my palm, a small private boost of bravery. She then proceeded toward the kitchen. I got free of the throw and straightened my t-shirt. In the hallway mirror, I noticed my flushed face. The story of yesterday night was carved there more vividly than any tattoo. Mike clattered the glasses like battle drums. "I'll leave a copy," I said, smiling. "The original is required for tomorrow's patch distribution." His eyes narrowed. I almost touched her hand, but the door slammed shut. Tony again. "Leave that flash drive," he answered dryly. She muttered, "You just bought us time." And in New York, time is more valuable than gold. Her speech sounded more like nighttime silence than workplace acoustics. Tony Wilson, Vice President of Development. I Googled a name at morning. Olivia introduced our guest, Arthur Merle, and her handshake struck me like an electric shock. "Testing begins tomorrow." When the room cleared, I sunk helplessly onto a chair, my palms damp. Olivia sat next to me. "If it remains above 20, we will chat." Olivia stepped back from the window. "Tony, 1 week is a luxury. Usually." Strangely, my heart was beating quicker. The conference area had a wall of screens, a table the length of a limousine, and an orchid standing guard. Lydia nodded. "But my friends call me Carla. Please follow me." Each ring pounded on my ribs like a blacksmith's hammer. The mirrored walls reflected my image, and I felt trapped inside a chrome ball. Under my arm was a tiny briefcase with a flash drive labeled Black Marker Neural Version 0.9 Beta, a single line of ink capable of storing an entire future. 47, 48, 49, her fingertips gently stroked my cheek like a breath. "We'll see where this leads," she said softly, her tone strong as a signature. Mike burst out wrapped in a towel and pretended to be in a hurry. He winked at me, pulled on his jacket, promised to stop by in the evening to see if the bodies were still alive, and dashed out the door. On the threshold, he turned. "Artie, get your old motherboard from storage or I'll toss it away." I laughed. The door closed. The silence seemed like a string, and then her phone rang, and I stood on the verge of a bridge constructed from a single little message. The elevator rose up the spine of the Hudson Yards Tower. The numerals blinked. I knew only one thing. When the cosmos sends the same star into your orbit twice, it's a sin to deny the voyage. Sometimes the greatest risk is not to jump. The same voice is in the call. I stepped outside into the chilly March sun, breathed in the metallic air, and felt the future draw me like an arrow on a bowstring. An interview. Is this an interrogation? Is this a goodbye? I had no idea. "Travel expenses are paid. RK." My heart skipped a beat and then pounded. "RK Richard Klein. This is Olivia's assistant. Miss Parker would like to meet you in her office tomorrow, 10 a.m. Hudson Yards." I was nearly persuaded that the night in Mike's apartment had been a warm hallucination until my phone rang at 9 a.m. I declined an unknown phone number. It rang again. A message. "A week has passed. Late February. The sunlight appeared brittle as glass. An invisible signal flashed. Connection is lost. Check the cable." The bulb we never turned off illuminated the half-empty cup like a point on the map of the previous night. At 5 a.m., I gave up and went to the workshop where I was immersed in the usual symphony of blinking chips, soldering stations, and flux. But today the boards blurred in my mind. Tony had stolen my digital fingerprints. I banged at the console, entered forensics mode, and rolled back the transaction history. Wilson's team used a secondary gateway based on the IP address fingerprint. Purchased the broken project for cents. "Don't whine, Artie," I mumbled. "It is merely another bug." 20 minutes later, a verification script extracted clean hashes from Mike's overnight backup and relocated the actual metrics to a protected folder. I made a 2-layered slide deck. Wilson's fabricated data appears on top with the true figures below, each time stamped at AO 2.27. "Let the numbers speak," I whispered, memorizing the click sequence. 9:45. An oval table, sparkling water, microphones turned on. Tony stood on the podium, smiling like he was rehearsing for a triumph. Olivia sat opposite, a focused expression on her face, but when our gazes connected, a bolt of apprehension raced through them. The chairman mentioned that we had examined the neural pilot project this morning. First slide, minus 15%, a surge of whispering. Tony spread his hands. "We took a risk, and you know what happened?" I stepped forward. "Excuse me," I said more loudly than intended, and clicked. The screen divided. On the left is the fraud. The time-stamped data is shown on the right. The graph skyrocketed to a 34.7% ROI. Mr. Morell, an investor, sought for an explanation of the delta. Files were uploaded from IP 10.9.7.23 at 7:14 a.m. as seen on the left panel. Tony's temples were plastered with sweat. He rasped out, "A technical error." "Technical faults do not sign using other people's keys," I said, low enough for only him to hear. "Remember, it's better to bark than bite." The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Wilson, please leave the room immediately." The door closed more quietly than I imagined. Outside, the adrenaline was leaving my skin. Olivia stepped out of a side office, her badge removed, and smiled defenselessly for the first time all week. "It wouldn't have happened without him," she declared openly to those nearby. Then I moved closer and pressed a button on my jacket. "I would like to appoint you as my formal deputy and R&D chief." "Do you think people will talk?" I murmured. "Allow them to talk," she said, her eyes laughing. "New York is already talking." I discovered I wasn't scared of the elevator to the 50th floor or a room full of strategists. The only danger was losing this opportunity. "I accept," I replied. "You already have," she said, laughing. It could have been the quickest contract negotiation of her career. On September, we were standing on the same tower's rooftop garden. Jazz played quietly between the string lights. Friends board members Mike and Carla all grinned in a synchronized fashion, forming a little crowd. Olivia, dressed in white, admitted, "I never thought the hardest negotiation of my life would be for my own soul." I replied, and I had no idea that the most difficult hack was to open my heart. She did, however, playfully narrow her eyes. "Come on, help me organize his kitchen." It was a stupid thing to do, but my feet complied. Under the mat was a familiar bronze key case. Mike never moved it. She clearly remembered that as well. I tossed my backpack near the record rack. The flat had not altered since college, with the exception of new dents on the walls and older ones on the furniture. The quiet swallowed every sound. "I wanted to surprise him," I said. "He claimed he was flying in yesterday. He's stranded in Denver." Olivia groaned as she approached the coffee machine. "I flew in for the forum. I plan to stay here. Ribbon cutting is scheduled for tomorrow. We are now two lost souls in my brother's house." Her smile only extended to one corner of her mouth. It never reached her eyes. I recall avoiding her look, fearful of freezing in the crystalline cold. Now the ice was melting. "Stay," she said, pouring into two separate mugs. Olivia tossed her blazer on the couch. Her white blouse appeared nearly translucent in the lamplight, like moonlit lace. "How long will Mike be gone?" I inquired, guiding the topic to safer ground while my imagination created other images. She exhaled, "Not long before sunrise. Perhaps noon. Flight delays." Lightning flashed. Just a quiet camera flash. The window rattled. Olivia flinched. "Most likely it is jet lag. You know what?" She remarked this while picking up my empty mug. "The guest rooms are immaculate and the sofa folds out." Or she paused, laying her palms on the marble counter, hesitating before meeting my gaze. "Not a flirt. This is not a challenge. Just a modest, almost infantile request for company. I'll take the couch," I replied. "But first, how long have you been wearing these heels?" One brow rose. I motioned to her feet. The black shoes were waiting on the wall, but her knees indicated a 12-hour shift. "She has been laughing since 7 o'clock this morning." "Okay, I'll brew some chamomile tea and you can finally relax." And I found myself going too far. "And will you tell me if Hudson Yards executives can read people's minds by observing micro-changes in their pupils?" She laughed with a wide, throaty voice. Nothing like the cold chuckle I remembered. "The ice has melted." Within a few minutes, we were exchanging absurd confessions. How I had mixed up two clients' laptops, how she closed a multi-million-dollar sale after her welcome email was filtered into spam. The light flickered again. The thunderstorm eventually found its voice. Thunder rolled through the trees. "You know," she whispered while the tea steeped. "This may sound strange, but I occasionally envy Mike." "Why?" "Because he still has buddies that show up unexpectedly." I omitted the automatic compliment and just handed her the cup. My knuckles touched her wrist. Her skin felt heated and trembling. She took a sip and closed her eyes. Another flash and the flat fell into a velvety shadow. In the silence, I understood. A night starting from a failed surprise was evolving into something more. Fate had tossed me an algorithm that no laptop could decrypt. "Artie." She pronounced my name for the first time, leaving the final syllable hanging between us. "You're not planning to flee at dawn, are you?" Rain drummed on the roof. I peered out the window and saw our reflections floating. She was dressed in white and I was a shadow holding a mug. "I will stay." Olivia leaned in her hair, brushing against my shoulder. She murmured, "He's not here anyway." She pulled off her exquisite watch and placed it beside my scuffed wrench key fob. Two diametrically opposed materials, polished steel and discolored rust, come into contact as if shaking hands. When I'm working a motherboard under a microscope is an infinite landscape. Pale, pre-dawn light filtered through the breach in the door, casting a shadow on the entrance. My heart sprang into my throat. We were still in the same position, her head on my shoulder and my hand on hers. The lock clicked like a taut guitar string and the hush broke. I sat up, suddenly tangled in the throw. Olivia slipped off my shoulder, murmuring something incoherent as Mike entered the doorway. "Look," I breathed. "I really just wanted to surprise you." Things simply escalated. He interrupted, staring at the coffee machine. I am not an idiot. I am not a judge either. His eyes shifted to his sister, who was grabbing milk from the fridge, and his lips curled into a barely visible smile. He whispered, "This place is huge, but the walls are thin. Just don't allow her to hide behind her employment again." The statements were surprisingly warm, even fraternal. The tension subsided so swiftly that I nearly stumbled from relief. A morning beam broke through the slats, but retreat was impossible. We ate oatmeal by turns. It was humorous right away. Olivia termed it investor fuel. Mike filled it with chocolate chips, stating, "That's what real pilots do." I sat opposite, trying to figure out a new reality. The brother wasn't raging with jealousy. The woman was serenely quiet, but my heart was blazing on the inside. Mike disappeared into the bathroom after breakfast, leaving me alone with Olivia amid the clatter of spoons. She twisted her cup as if solving a quadratic problem. "No regrets?" she finally asked. "Not a second," I responded. Despite the fact that my voice was shaking, I said the truth. "Then let's be clear, our rhythms do not match. I live in New York. I fly once a week. My calendar is a battle zone, and I've got a soldering iron, a rusted van, and Mrs. Norton's cat stole my lunch." We both laughed. The music eased the remainder of the uneasiness. Richard Klein appeared on the screen like a flash. Blood drained from her face. She stood aside and responded. I caught bits despite the muffled sound. "Boredom will end the transaction. Investors are waiting. There's no room for sentimentality." Her shoulders straightened again, as if wearing a steel jacket. The call only lasted a minute, but it felt like an hour. When she put down the phone, her voice was sharp. "I need to fly out today. I thought your life depended on boarding permits." I attempted to make a joke. It did not work. She inhaled as if plunging. "Artie, when it comes to personal priorities, job takes precedence. I despise it, yet if I blink, everything falls apart." Words were superfluous. Instead, I put my workshop badge and an old flash drive on the table. My assets were ludicrous in comparison to her empires. I responded softly, "You talk as if we are on opposite shores. Someone once built a bridge between Manhattan and Brooklyn." She intertwined her fingers and put them to her lips as if covering something dangerously vulnerable before turning away to pack. Her taxi arrived at the airport 20 minutes later. I brought her suitcase downstairs. She remained on the curb, seeking for words, but merely grasped my hand. "I'll call," she said over the doorway. "Call," I managed to say with a forced smile. The yellow automobile consumed her and vanished, leaving behind a shimmering trail of fuel in the air. Back inside, I felt the throw still keep her warm. It would either spark a new world or burn up with me. The door to the 50th floor slid open. In front of me was a marble reception desk with the Parker and Skyline Ventures logos. A sharp-eyed woman glanced up. "Mr. Arthur Merle." "That's me," I explained, trying not to smash the briefcase. Her smile indicated that we had been friends for years. Glass and dark wood drift by like movie frames as she whispers, "Don't worry about Tony. He barks more loudly than he bites." Olivia was waiting at the window. She wore a graphite suit, but her hair was down today, pouring gold over her shoulders. When she spotted me, a hint of strain dropped from her shoulders. A short flashback. "You arrived." Next to her stood a tall man in a dark blue suit, his brows curled like claws. "5 minutes." Tony raised his palm without greeting. "Tell me why your neural something or other is superior to what we previously purchased from Diot." Every eye, including the flowers, was on me. I inserted in the flash drive, noticed Olivia's prepared expression, and started the demo. Streams of matrices and graphs rose. I thoroughly discussed adaptive caching, latency reduction, and peak load prediction. On the third minute, the screen displayed a projected ROI of 132% for every dollar invested. Silence. Tony strolled around the table, pausing under the green pulse. Nice slide presentation, youngster. It will fail under real-world settings. Pocket buzz. Mike, you can do it. Breathe. I inhaled deeply before pulling the lever. Live demonstration. I connected my laptop to the corporate server and imported actual traffic. The ceiling appeared to drop until the graph stabilized and lit up, plus 29.8%. Carla simply brings coffee, she whispered. Wow. Tony coughed as if choked by his own doubt. 1 week pilot, he exclaimed. Right backup given at 7:30 a.m. SHA 256 validated. The access log reveals who accessed that node user, TW Wilson. The room froze. I ended my presentation. The final slide forecasted a profit growth of 30 to 38% over the next 2 quarters. Whispers were turned into a wave of approval.